Good morning, everyone. My name is Cornelia Stevens. I'm the Executive Director of Top Area Learning Centers, and I have the privilege of being a chair for the Early Childhood Recommendations panel. I'd like to thank you all for taking time out of your busy week and then the end of your week to actually join us for this morning's meeting. We're going to begin with a few, little reminders that this is a remote meeting, and today's meeting materials are posted on the panel meeting website on the Children's Cabinet's website, kschildrenscabinet.org. Panel members, we ask you to clearly identify yourself when you begin speaking. Please, you can use the raise your hand feature to show that you would like to share information or give feedback or comment. It is not required, but it is helpful so that we know who would actually like to speak. For today's agenda, we are going to have our welcome I'm doing now. We're going to approve the November agenda, approve the October meeting minutes. We have our Kansas Open Forum. We have an update on the child care systems from the child care systems improvement team. We will also have an update on the Pandemic Relief Fund and the preschool development planning grant that was just submitted from Kansas. We have our work group sessions, and so we will be breaking out again this morning. Our work groups will have an opportunity to report out. We'll have bright spots, and so we love hearing about all of the bright spots and things that are happening across the state. Upcoming meeting dates, and then we will adjourn our meeting. Panel members, we ask you to clearly identify yourself when you begin speaking. Make sure that you say your name because this is a virtual meeting, and so we want people who happen to be watching our live stream or the recording to know who's speaking when you're making a first and a second motion. So the first thing I'd like to mention is that I would like to approve the November agenda, but we do have a modification of the agenda. We do have Sarah Gardner, who is going to be giving an update on the preschool development grant that was just submitted for the state of Kansas. And so that has been added to the agenda. So with that modification, may I have a motion to approve?
This is Maritas Altuna. I move to approve the November agenda with modifications.
Perfect. May I have a second?
This is Amy Meek, and I second.
Thank you. All those in favor, thumbs up. And any opposed? Okay, with no opposition, that's good. All right, and so we have our October minutes. Hannah did send out the October minutes. Has there been any updates or any revisions to the minutes from the meeting? No, okay. So with that, may I have a motion to approve the October minutes?
This is Pam Noble. I move that we approve the October minutes.
All right, may I have a second?
This is Tara Taylor. I move to, or the second the motion.
Perfect. All those in favor, thumbs up. Any opposed? Okay, great. So with each meeting, we have opportunities for people across the state of Kansas to come and share information with us. It went with an open forum. And so, Hannah, do we have anything for today's meeting?
We do not.
Okay, perfect. And so we don't have any discussion for today, but if you are interested in sharing anything with the panel, please, and we encourage you to email Hannah White at hwhite@ksde.org by 5 o'clock on December 15th, so that you can share your comments or whatnot with us in writing and then verbally during our presentation. For our first presentation, we are going to have Melissa Schoenberger with KDHE, who is going to give an update on the Child Care Systems Improvement Team.
Thank you. And I want to give you a shout out for pronouncing my last name completely, because it's always pronounced just like it looks and sounds. So I had an internal little thrill there. So thank you very much. Again, my name is Melissa Schoenberger. I serve as the Assistant Director and Field Services Supervisor for the Child Care Licensing Program, which is housed at KDHE. And I'm here today to speak to you specifically about our Systems Improvement Team, which is an advisory group which supports the work of the Child Care Licensing Program. The work began aggressively again in 2020 after a several year break. And when I say several year, it was a good chunk of time, at least 8 years. So it was really exciting to see the systems improvement team really dig in and provide some guidance to the program. And again, as we stated, it is an advisory group of stakeholders across the state. If there's a positive of the pandemic, it has really shrunk the state in the sense that we were able to get stakeholders as far as Ulysses, Kansas to Goodland, all across I-70, every little highway we have in Kansas, and really make it a very fruitful, thoughtful discussion of and representing anybody in the early childhood system within Kansas. I like to look at it as we've increased providers and parents. And I think at this round, we have an architect who is very intimately and it serves as an architect and as a parent in our group. So I'm just we had a meeting yesterday and I'm always amazed at the group that comes together. And as I quickly ran through our participants today, there's quite a few who represent the systems improvement team. So I hope not to bore you as we go through our initiatives. Again, our group over the last year put forth 14 recommendations I'm very proud of. Some of the highlights of them is to include it in clarity of the regulations. Always, how do we make regulations clearer to not just the regulated community? I really challenge everybody when we look at that is how do we do it to the layperson that just is walking on the streets? Because if they can understand the intent of a regulation, then our regulated community will. We also wanted to increase resources and supports for prospective and current providers, which I will go into a little bit more intimately in the next few slides. And we really wanted to do a increased public awareness of what is the importance of childcare licensing? Why should quality care matter to the state of Kansas? Hannah, if you want to move over to the next slide. Okay, so several of these recommendations will be launched later this year. I'm really excited about the toolkits. We have an outside vendor that worked with a very specific group within our systems improvements who really dug deep into the work of what supports a new person who wants to launch a childcare business, specifically in a home setting. And so we really were very thoughtful about the work that came out of the systems improvement team. We engaged current providers and very new providers into the system. What are we doing well when we engage, and what are we doing that might potentially lose a provider that first year? What's overwhelming? How do we demystify that? How do we put together a toolkit beyond our surveyor connections and our childcare aware and all of the systems within Kansas, but a really viable toolkit that somebody can go to if they're having a rough day and they're like, well, what is my resource? Who do I call? What do I need to do? I'm really excited to see the launching of this toolkit later on this year. And the goal of the toolkit is it to be a very livable document as we learn, because we should always continuously review our system and our program, that the toolkit can be updated as we evolve with providers. Another initiative across the state of Kansas that came through the systems improvement team was the concept of the GO team, which is now being led by Childcare Aware of Kansas. It's really then represents a team that can support a community that just doesn't know where they're going. They have brought people to the table, but they don't know where do we move with that next step. So Childcare Aware of Kansas will be moving that concept that bubbled up out of the systems improvement team to a real tangible product in the state of Kansas. Also really, again, as I mentioned in the earlier slide, really wanted a campaign that spoke to quality care, why it's important in Kansas, why childcare is important for the structure of Kansas for parents to go to work, but also just demystifying, because as a part of the childcare licensing team here every day, it's too hard. So really digging into, from a perspective of provider, no, it's not too hard, and this is what we can do, and these are the messages that we really wanted to create. So it wasn't from my perspective of somebody who works intimately in the program. It was from the ad campaign that you're going to see some snippets of moving forward. They were definitely taken from the words of very viable providers that are existing today in Kansas, to really connect with new providers. Hannah, do you want to move forward? Okay, and again, already spoke ahead of myself, as you will see through the ad campaign that we're going to show you. These were the three major components: quality care, the benefits of becoming a childcare provider, and resources and supports. Because we don't want a provider even a provider who's been in the system for 15 years, I never want them to feel lost, that they can't have a person to connect to, whether it's their local surveyor, whether it's the health consultant network through childcare, whether it's an infant toddler specialist through Casito, or whether it's somebody they're calling to Topeka just to navigate through, how do I submit my renewal application? So we're looking at just not the new person, but all of those supports for providers. Hannah, if you want to go to the next slide, please. So this is just a snippet, we're dipping our toe into just some of the very beginnings of the ad campaign that you're going to see through the state of Kansas. Really talking about that 60%, that we only have 60% of parents have access to the childcare they need. This is definitely data driven from our supply and demand campaign that ChildcareWare does, and digs in deep to who's being served in the state of Kansas. So we're utilizing our partners' data to really drive the conversation in Kansas. And this will be one of them. And this is really just the beginning of what does it take to become a child care provider, so that we're not really throwing all of the regulations at once to them, but really just what you need at a very basic level. High school diploma, you need a clear background check, overall good health, because, taking care of small children is not a small task, and you need to be physically able to do that. I struggle with my two little dogs every day. I can imagine what it's like to run around after 7 kids every given day. So really want to address that at the very early onset, and that you want to care for kids, that you have a passion, and you may not see it, but you are a professional. You get to be your own boss. So really wanting to put that out there very early. And if you can be that type of provider, let's start a conversation and then get you really looking into what it takes to become a licensed provider in our state. And then supports that we provide you, that it's in continuous training, that there's support networks, and then really connecting you not with just the support networks of partners, but some of those cohorts of providers that are going along in the state. And then subsidies for families. I think really we are trying to demystify that you're not just providing a service for yourself as your own business, but really supporting if you want to engage becoming a child care provider through DCF, and that you're supporting families, really providing a safety net for low-income families to continue to be in the workforce while their children are getting good quality care, because that's really what every child in Kansas deserves. And then, so that's what we put forth last year. So we did a lot of work last year. And this year we are digging into 3 additional work groups that were driven by the systems improvement team. So KDHE does not drive the work. We provide the backbone and the support, but all of the work is driven by the committees and the advisory group. And these are the three groups that they are going to move forward with: system engagement and communication, regulation and best practice, provider supports. Really, as I shared with you, the provider toolkit was really home-based. And now we're looking at how do we provide our toolkit to our community partners and our center-based facilities, because they are very unique in their work. So we really dug into our work groups yesterday. We only met for 90 minutes and then reported out. And I was just exhausted afterwards because there are so many amazing ideas and I want to tackle them all. I know we can't, but really excited to see what recommendations the systems improvement team will have to share with you guys next year and how many recommendations we put forth. Again, we meet monthly. It is a process where you have to apply. Not everybody, I think we had to turn down maybe 2 or 3 this last year, because we really want to be very thoughtful and not stack on too many from one group, and make sure that we have representation from the whole regulatory system, again, including parents, providers, along all the way up through CCL leadership. If you have more questions about the systems improvement team, feel free to email me, or if this is something that you'd like to engage in next year, please let us know and we will connect you with your application process. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to share about our work this morning.
Thank you, Melissa. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, no. Well, thank you again for sharing again. Oh, yes. Okay, Logan.
Hi, good morning. It's Logan Stensing. I was going to ask, and I think it's really exciting to see some of the advertisements. I know I've gotten some of them from DCF, so it's exciting to see that new round of ads being out to just recruit for the field. I was curious if there were any thoughts to maybe tailor some of those statistics regionally, because I know like with social media advertising, you can get a lot more narrowed down and even broader. So I was just, that way in communities where the percentage is not 60%, it's even lower, that it kind of could heighten the need. I was just curious if that had been a thought. Thank you.
Logan, as this is a statewide campaign, we have not really went to that next level, but that really got me excited. So I will be sharing that with our group that's specifically working with that, and how do we tailor that message to a more community level to give maybe our surveyors or any of our partners, the Go team, all of that, some more driven data that they can plug in specifically. Our toolkit that we are wanting to work on will be community more driven. And I believe that's where that would fall very natural alignment with. So thank you for that idea.
Thank you. And thank you for the work you do, Melissa.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
So for those that might be interested, what is the time frame for the next open session or for applicants? What's the time frame of the CSIT?
That would be, we take the summer off. So we will go up until May. And so then that's when we will reevaluate our applications again and have that sort of open round of applicants. And then we start right back in the fall.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again, Melissa. Thank you for sharing the information and for the work that you're doing. And so it's definitely a need. We definitely felt that. And so thank you again.
Mr. Cornelia,
Absolutely.
Before Melissa hops off, I just wanted to back up what Logan was saying. And I know like our Board of County Commissioners here in Johnson County is asking for county level data. So even we're more narrowed down than regional. And with the reasoning, the rationale behind it is they're asking what is going on in our county and what funding or resources can we as a county put in to help. But they really want to know, not just across the state. And actually, we've had some commissioners misinterpret when they're seeing these numbers that are coming out. They're going, oh, well, we have this huge need in our county. I'm like, well, we're not at 60%. We have needs, yes, and amazingly, which is something I never thought would happen in Johnson County. And we actually have to say, yes, we need more childcare, other than infant care, which we've always needed. So I think that, even if it was the raw data was made available to counties, that we could kind of put our own information together, that would be really helpful as well.
I'm just going to give a shout out to our partners, Childcare, where they have great point in time data that you can access, and they provide that. Aldana, if you're not utilizing them as a service, I would encourage you to connect, because they can provide it and break it down for every county. So I utilize them myself. So really, it's great to have such good statewide partners to be able to rely on, and would connect you with them.
Great. Any further questions or comments? Okay, I hear none. All right, thank you again, Melissa. All right, next we have a presentation from Michelle Allen with the Department of Children and Families, and she is going to talk about relief funding investments and the allocations to the early childhood infrastructure.
Good morning, all. Thank you so much for having me this morning. Hannah, if you could move on to the next slide. So just a couple quick goals for today. As always, I like to kind of ground us in what CCDF is and what it means, and some of the opportunities that we have specifically around that funding, as well as an overview of services that are currently available through CCDF, and just a couple program highlights on some things that are happening that we're really excited about. And go on to the next slide. So first, just a quick background on the Child Care and Development Funds. DCF is the state's, we can go to the next slide, Hannah. DCF is the state's recipient of the Federal Child Care and Development Funds, or CCDF, as you'll commonly hear me refer to it. So DCF is the lead administrator of these funds, meaning we're responsible for distributing these funds and making sure that we meet all of the federal requirements for the uses of those funds. There's several key goals for this work, including providing leadership and coordination, promoting family engagement and consumer education, providing stable childcare financial assistance, ensuring equal access to childcare, establishing standards to ensure health and safety, recruiting and retaining a qualified workforce, supporting continuous quality improvement, and ensuring grantee accountability. Next slide. As part of our goal to provide leadership and coordination, there are a lot of different entities that we maintain relationships with, many of you on this call, and collaborate with on a regular basis. So some of these obviously may be familiar to you, and some of them you may look at and be a little bit surprised. Obviously, childcare providers are a key component of this work, but we do work with, and a lot of the work that we do also centralizes around like local childcare resource and referral, or Part B, Part C services, childcare licensing, Head Start, and links to quality. Some other entities include child welfare, local governments, and tribal organizations. So as you can see, there's a lot of different moving parts that we need to make sure are working seamlessly together for the children and families that we serve. Next slide. Within Kansas itself, there are 4 agencies who play a key role in the early childhood system and make up the early childhood state directors team. Again, something that many individuals on this call probably already know. They meet every other week just to keep each other updated and to make decisions collectively about early childhood at the state level. So we as DCF are only one piece of that pie. And with our state's child care development funds, we're able to provide ongoing funding and partnership for several contracts throughout the state that delivers programs and resources for childcare providers, children, and families in Kansas. So, next slide. Before I jump into the overview of the programming, does anyone have any questions on CCDF in general? Okay, perfect. So when the pandemic very first started, we knew that we needed to act quick to do our best at mitigating as much financial burden with this life-changing event and the impacts that it had on our childcare providers. So our first action was to release the Hero Relief Grant in partnership with Child Care Aware of Kansas. So many of you submitted ideas and different potential strategies to really mitigate the challenges related to the pandemic. So this is everything that we've done to date, or the majority of things that we've done to date. Really excited to share some of the progress that we've made. So again, I presented here a few times, so I'll just kind of give a brief overview of the structure of these slides. So at the top, you notice that this one says direct provider support. We broke everything out into a few different categories just to help us kind of bucket them together to make sense of the purpose of the items. So within direct provider supports, our first initiative was the Hero Relief Provider Funding. So 8,093 childcare programs. This number is duplicated, and I believe it also includes our relative care providers throughout the state received funding through this opportunity, totaling over $11 million. Last year, we released our first round of sustainability grants. This was funded through the CURSA Act. For that opportunity, we had 3,171 childcare providers or programs, receive funding through that, and that totaled over $43 million. So then round two, this was funded through our American Rescue Plan Stabilization Fund. We had 3,522 childcare provider or programs receive funding through that opportunity, and that totaled over $47 million. So next slide. And then round three of sustainability grants, this is still currently available, and the application does close November 30th. This will be the last sustainability grants round. So if you know somebody or know a program that hasn't been receiving these funds, please encourage them to apply as soon as possible. They can reach out to Child Care Aware to get started on that application. We have had over 3,800 childcare programs applying that have applied since March. So this opportunity was our longest duration. It totaled over $160 million and provided sustained funding for 14 months. So we had initially discussed the grant amount for the initial 9 months, and then the last part of the grant period was another 5 months of funding. That opportunity, or those amounts for that part were recently determined. So I'll talk about that just on the next slide. But first, just want to note our Child Care Appreciation Bonus. That application is also closing soon on December 10th. So if you, again, or someone you know have not completed these applications yet, please encourage them to do so very quickly. So I believe I pulled this number at the beginning of the week or maybe late last week, but we have had over 10,000 individuals that have applied since July of this year. So really exciting to see that number. So again, sustainability grants, get your application in. If you haven't already, applications will close on November 30th. So for our family and group childcare homes, the next amounts for those final 5 months will be $750, and then license capacity of 24 children or less will be $1,475 per month. License capacity of 25 to 99 children will be $3,800 per month, and then for our larger centers with license capacities of 100 or more children, those amounts will be $7,400 per month. So some really exciting things happening with our startup supports. You all have heard a little bit about the Child Care Health Consultant Network already this morning, but just want to highlight again that tiered supports are available now through partnership with Child Care Aware of Kansas and the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. Background checks is one program I do just want to highlight a little bit. This opportunity was originally available through September of 2023. However, we were able to extend that agreement. So background checks and licensing fees will continue to be waived through September of 2024. So since September of 2021, this opportunity has waived costs for 8,343 background checks, 670 initial licensing applications, and 3,406 renewals. So really exciting to see those numbers, and hopefully just seeing that the providers not having to pay for that cost, hopefully helping to reduce the burden financially across our state. Community partnerships is to support local and regional engagement to enable communities to plan for and address childcare needs. And those grants are currently available. Again, visit the Child Care Aware of Kansas website if you have questions or interested in looking to see if your community coalition may benefit from that. Our childcare quality improvement and support agreement was recently awarded to Child Care Aware of Kansas. This agreement does include our links to quality implementation, which is our voluntary quality improvement system, and we'll also work to set up shared service networks. So this will provide an opportunity to leverage services and needed services throughout the state of Kansas. And then EC Resources Kansas is another thing we're really, really excited about. This is coming very, very, very soon. This is an online catalog of templates and resources to support childcare providers and programs. And within the site, it will also provide a connection to telehealth and teletherapy services that providers then will have the purchase or the opportunity to purchase at a very low cost, like very, very low cost. So this is a website that will be username and password protected. So I'm unable to log in today to kind of show you what it looks like. But I do have some screenshots from my colleague Megan on the next slide. So in the upper left-hand corner, you will see the homepage. So very neat, clean website. We're really excited about how it looks. And then the Engaging Families screenshot is just kind of that like section title page and what that will look like. And then the child tax credit page is the more in-depth like resource level page. So really excited to get this information out very, very soon. Again, it is username and password protected, so you will have to register, be approved to go into the system, but we anticipate this being available for all childcare providers in the state. So within workforce supports, we still have increased professional development and scholarships available through partnership with Kansas Child Care Training Opportunity. This includes in-service training, higher education, and CDA credentials. Also, with Casito ITSN, the mental health technical assistance remains available to help support social emotional development of young children. And then on the next slide, also available through the Infant Toddler Specialist Network, we have some additional support to help providers working with children who have disabilities. And this is really focused on building collaboration for supporting and understanding inclusive environments within programs. And then also workforce registry coming soon. Okay, and then just a couple of things within family supports. Just want to highlight our Hero Relief program. Within that, we raised the income limit to 250% of the federal poverty level. We reduced the family share deduction for essential workers. there's a couple, the essential worker part of this program has since ended. However, childcare assistants, we'll talk about this a little bit on the next slide. The extended opportunities available around childcare assistants remain available. So just want to note that. And then the Family Needs and Preferences Study, we recently awarded this to Wichita State University, and the goals for this study is to help us understand the drivers behind the low participation in DCF childcare assistance. So we're currently working on a couple of surveys of families and childcare providers. Those will also include some interviews and things like that. So we're really excited for the results of that study. And then again, just want to highlight some of the general childcare assistance changes that have been made since the beginning of the pandemic. Though these are not all funded through relief dollars, we just want to, again, highlight them. Childcare assistance is such a key piece of our CCDF spending, as we are required to spend 70% of our regular annual CCDF dollars on it. And it allows many of our families access to affordable quality childcare, so they may go to work while their children are receiving the benefits of a safe, quality early learning environment. So we have raised the income limit again from 185% of the federal poverty level to 250% of the federal poverty level. We've reduced this family share deduction for many of our families, increased maximum rates to the 85th percentile. And this means that 85% of childcare providers charge rates that are less than or equal to the maximum rates allowed by the state based on our annual market rate survey. Next slide. And then the last couple of things I'm going to highlight is just some of our general support for our team. We cannot do this work alone, and we're very fortunate to have both Mammoth Creative Company as well as the Public Consulting Group providing support to us in different ways. Mammoth, like Melissa mentioned, has provided a lot of support with some marketing campaigns around childcare assistance, general childcare awareness. Many of you may have seen commercials on TV, radio ads, things like that, as well as just general materials like this slideshow and other messaging supports. And then our backbone support team has provided administrative and strategic support to our pandemic relief team. So the last thing I just want to highlight is our Child Care in Kansas website. This is a website that we will continue to post updates on, make connections across available initiatives, and just provide any additional support related to pandemic relief. So again, just want to thank everyone for having me this morning. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'll also put my email in the chat if anyone would like to reach out.
Thank you, Michelle. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
This is Crystal Henry from the Family Conservancy, and I've said this on a few calls in the past year, but we've just seen so many more families be supported by these changes for subsidies, and it's just been made a major impact. My program's in Wyandotte County, Kansas, and especially with that increase to the 250%, just made it a significant impact, as well as the reduction of the family share. The funds have gone a lot further to keep their children in care. So I just always want to keep acknowledging that, because it's been very impactful here.
Thank you for sharing that, Crystal. Always good to hear that you all in the field are seeing families benefit from the services we're able to provide.
Any other comments or questions?
Hello, this is Logan Stensing again. I was curious for the Family Needs and Preference Survey, when that's expected by WSU to be released.
We are working on the draft of it right now, so I would feel comfortable saying probably in the spring. And we are already kind of prepping our marketing and outreach team to be able to provide some support in getting that message out. So we'll work likely really closely with probably several of the people on this call to ensure we're able to get families who are willing to respond to it. So more to come on that. You all will definitely be an audience when we're ready to send that out.
Anyone else?
Trisha, I see your hand up.
Hi, this is Trisha Wagner with the Kansas Early Childhood Developmental Services. And when you do launch that survey, I would really like some questions specifically about children with special needs and childcare needs for those children, and would like to send that out to families receiving services through Part C in Kansas. So I'd love to connect with you sometime.
Yeah, well, I will, I'll email you and let's definitely talk about that. And I will make a note. Michelle Adams is also providing a lot of support with that. So she and I can touch base about that too, but let's definitely talk.
Perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, Michelle, I think I speak on behalf of all of us who have benefited from the support of DCF, that the support that we received during the pandemic, allowed us to keep our doors open. And so thank you guys for being creative and thinking outside the box and coming up with ways to, to be able to support, our staff and the children and families that we serve. So thank you.
Well, and thank you all for the work that you are doing to be a safe, stable, nurturing environment that the families and children are able to go to. So thank you all for your very hard work.
For our last presenter, we have Michelle Gardner, who's going to give Sarah Gardner, who is going to give an update on the preschool development Birth to 5 planning grant that was just submitted.
Thanks, Cornelia. My name is Sarah Gardner. I work at the KU Center for Public Partnerships and Research. We provide some backbone support to the Children's Cabinet, who is the designated grant lead for the current PDG B5 implementation grant, and the designated lead for this new grant opportunity. So I'm going to give you an overview of what this was, and a little bit about what was submitted for the Kansas submission. So I wanted to pull this out of the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity from ACF. This is a planning grant. The grant we are eligible for in the state is a planning grant. So our goal is to do another needs assessment and another strategic plan. Those are the primary deliverables of this grant. So it's not a grant that comes with a lot of resources for implementation or scaling of programs and services. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that as a function of this opportunity. Sorry, I realize this is kind of tiny on the screen. It was due November 7th, the day before the election. So a lot of states had a lot of fun getting grants in. It's a 1-year grant. It would be starting on December 30th of this year and going to the 29th of December the following year. It's up to $4 million and there's 10 awards total. We are one of 27 states eligible for this new planning grant. There were 23 states who are currently receiving implementation grants or renewal grants, which is how we've been funding the last 3 years of PDG. And then there are 4 states or territories that have not received any PDG funding at all. So we are competing with 26 other states and territories for 10 awards. I will just note that the 4 states who have not received any grant funding, if they score above a certain point, that they will automatically be funded regardless of how those scores relate to other states. So we're viewing this as fairly competitive. There is also, if you follow grant releases, there's another PDG grant that is also out there. That is for states who have not yet received that implementation or renewal grant funding. So that's another 3-year cycle. We were not eligible for that because we are currently receiving one. So a little bit of confusion there on who's eligible for what, but we are going into another planning grant phase should we be awarded. It's very similar if you were around and remember the before times, before the pandemic, 2019, we did a large statewide effort to develop our needs assessment and write the All In for Kansas Kids strategic plan. So the activities in the grant follow very closely to that. There are 5 activities outlined in the grant that we have to speak to. A statewide needs assessment and strategic plan are the 2 big activities. You can also put some dollars into maximizing parent and family engagement, supporting the B2 5 workforce and disseminating best practices. And then should you be able to complete your needs assessment and strategic plan within the grant year early enough, you can then open up funding for what they're calling quality improvement efforts. So you'll see activity 5, and I'll speak to it briefly, but it will not be, those funds will not be available to Kansas until we submit the needs assessment and strategic plan. And as a current PDGR, which is renewal grant or implementation grantee, we had to reference our existing work and build on those lessons learned from the pandemic. So I'm going to walk through what we wrote under each of the activities. So activity 1 is the statewide needs assessment. So we'll do a lot of work collecting and analyzing existing needs assessments. There's a lot of work going on. There's a lot of surveys out there. We're not going to try and reinvent the wheel here. We're going to try to leverage that data that's already out there. So we know the workforce survey just went out. We know there's a McVie needs assessment, community readiness assessment happening. A lot of local level efforts to identify what's going on at a local level. We're going to try to pull all of that together. We also have to speak to the impact of relief funding efforts, which we know that Michelle just went through a lot of that, and you guys have spoken to the impact of those programs and resources. So we'll want to tie that into the needs assessment. Michelle also referenced the registry. If it is up and has data in it before the end of the year, next year we will absolutely leverage that data. We'll continue our Tomorrow story collection. We do anticipate having 10 community engagement sessions across the state. It's TBD on what exactly those look like, depending on how the world feels with the pandemic and if we're able to convene in person. Or how we can get the most participation. And then, of course, we'll produce an updated comprehensive needs assessment. If you followed along with our PDG the last 3 years, we have done a small update each year. This will be a slightly larger effort. So we will do those efforts have been just kind of a scan of what's out there and what exists. This will include some new data collection efforts. Activity 2 is our statewide strategic plan. So we will use the needs assessment data and in parallel begin to write what will technically be a new strategic plan, but will follow very closely to the current. So I note on here that we'll produce an updated 5-year All In for Kansas Kids strategic plan. Again, we're kind of in the middle of our current one, but we want to make sure that we are setting ourselves up again for long-term and sustainability. So we will be sort of parlaying the current strategic plan and leveraging the new needs assessment data into a new 5-year strategic plan. One of the big things that we'll do is, if funded at the level that we've requested, is do an ECCE agency alignment gap analysis. This will seek to understand the limitations of our current state level coordination model. So this is something that you heard sort of Governor Kelly allude to when she was campaigning, that should she win re-election, that she was interested in looking at how to organize or align early childhood services and programs. Just look into that and explore what that would look like and make sure we have the right system in Kansas. That will be a pretty robust effort and will include several different public engagement sessions. We'll also do some very targeted equity sessions. So we will try and recruit families from traditionally underserved or marginalized communities and speak specifically to them about, are your needs represented? Are your voices represented in some of the tactics that we're writing into the strategic plan? And then of course, share different feedback opportunities similar to what we did when we wrote the initial strategic plan. Sorry, Anna, you can go, thanks. 3, 4, and 5 I've got here on one slide, and that's in large part because the planning grant focuses most of its energy and effort on 1 and 2, which is the needs assessment and strategic plan. For activity 3, 2 strategies we are going to be looking at to maximize parent and family engagement. One, we did a developmental health survey. We had over 1,000 responses to that survey asking parents and providers, what is your understanding of developmental health? What is your understanding of the need for screenings? Heard a lot of information back, and we'd like to take that data and convene 6 different family groups across the state to actually use that data and then come up with some awareness or marketing outreach initiatives that we could use to help parents and families understand the importance and the purpose of developmental health. The second activity or second strategy under activity 3 is to map family experiences in enrolling in ECCE services. So we're going to map how families experience that enrollment process compared to what does it look like on the the public side of things, like how do we promote enrollment? Does that actually map family experiences, and where are there opportunities to maybe increase efficiencies for enrollment? For activity 4, we're going to explore actual workable compensation reform strategies. There's a lot of information out there. States are doing a lot of interesting things. Every state's different in terms of the level of funding that the state is willing to invest in it. So we're really focused on practical, workable compensation reform strategies, whether they be local level or state level for the workforce, the B-5 workforce. We also are proposing to support 2 to 5 communities with some recruitment, retention, or sustainability focused efforts. So there's a lot of PDG subgrants that did some interesting things with health insurance stipends or other ways to support recruitment and retention. We know there are multi-payer models that are out there, different local outreach strategies. And so the goal of this would be to invest in some target communities who can test some of those strategies. And then should we be able to get to activity 5, we are going to focus on dissemination of the KELS, the Kansas Early Learning Standards, which we know is going through an update and a revision right now. Many of you on this call are part of that work. So we'll just support the dissemination of that as appropriate to the different audiences, as well as the family engagement and partnership standards. So that is the planning grant that was submitted on November 7th. And we should know, I would guess, hopefully before December 30th when the grant year starts. Fingers crossed on that. And obviously, once we find out if we're funded and at what level, we will come back to this group with updates and opportunities to engage. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you, Sarah, for the update. And I'm excited that Kansas was able to apply for a new planning grant. Does anybody have any questions or comments? No, okay. All right, so before we break out into our groups, we're going to have a quick break. And so it is 9:53 on my clock. And so how about we come back to your groups at 10:05. And you will, what do you think, 10:30, 10:35? Want to give them 30 minutes, Hannah?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do, and then I think that works well. So we'll all report back 10:35 to the big room.
Okay, so 10:05, you will come back from our break and then break out into your groups. Again, an email was sent. We all had our designated groups or groups that we were assigned to, but please, feel free to go to the group where you feel like you have the most interest and connection, and then we will see you back at 10:35.
All right, my quality and environments people. I think we're slowly coming back. So last month we talked about a few things. I know we had maybe a potential follow-up from Emily with CCPC. We also talked about the SICCs and the LICCs and some funding. But if I remember correctly, there wasn't anything that this group specifically grabbed onto so much as work that we wanted to do. So I had an idea that maybe we should just look at the strategic plan real quick. There's a couple of strategies outlined that obviously relate directly to quality and environments. I think that could be an easy place to start. There's no opposition there. You guys able to see my screen okay? Sweet. Okay, so for goal 7, quality and environments, let's see if this will work. One that really struck me as interesting and something I know that that Melissa has expressed a lot of interest in is the 7.1.2, the local zoning issue. And I know that we've kind of discussed it as staff before, if there's a way that the panel could address this and figure out either an agreement for local communities or even addressing it at the state level. So that's one thing I kind of thought we could talk about today is the zoning issue. I think the investments in quality improvement grants, that's been spoken to in other ways, kind of like what we just heard about. I don't know how the panel could get involved with that. And then within 7.2, we kind of did talk about links to quality, and if the QRIS has a role to play, or if we have a role to play, this group with QRIS and implementation that's about to kick off with the registry. And then we know that for 7.2.3, the KELS, the early learning standards, are already being updated right now. So maybe work of this group could get involved with the dissemination and connect with that group. So those are a few things that I'm kind of thinking off the top of my head, but I'm very happy to hear you guys' thoughts.
So actually, I think it's quite a good thing that you brought up the strategic plan, because actually the feedback that I got from the CCPC board at our meeting could in fact, I think, fall under 7.2.4. I think, if I'm reading it correctly, about provide professional development to programs. Right now, and part of it, the key buzzword that's really popular with providers right now is mentorship and looking at possibilities. So that was one of the deals of feedback, but specifically mentorship in a way where the mentor is also being credited for the work that they're doing. That, you know, it does exist in some capacities, not very much right now, but pre-pandemic it did exist for experienced providers to participate in a mentorship capacity, but we received a small stipend for it, but like it couldn't count towards our clock hours, things like that. And so so what many of us in the regulated community are asking for is that, as we have shown that we have good compliance, we have good experience, some of us have degrees, we are in fact experts in our fields, utilize us as professional resources amongst our peers. That provides professional development at all ends. Multiple other industries offer mentorship type programs, but yet there is this resistance towards utilizing those of us in the workforce who have expertise and experience to offer. So that is one of the keys that came back from it. Another thing that is a reality, that whether it comes from recommendations from this panel or whatever. But at some point, somebody has got to address the issue with backup sub care. It doesn't exist. And so what goes on then is that providers like myself, we miss out on things like regular doctor's appointments. All things, people are wanting to come to the table and participate in these meetings. How did you get yourself stuck, friend? How did we do that? There we go, unstuck. There we go. Sorry. People want to come to these meetings and need to find a sub, and it's inconvenient and difficult for providers to come here. And that, I would love to see a solve to that. But most importantly, it's things like, my kid was sick this week and I didn't have a way to guaranteeably get her to the doctor because we're at the end of my husband's PTO. My mom had an MRI the day that I needed to get her into the office, and my only other option was waiting until urgent care at the end of the day or closing. So there have been sub pools in the past. They dry up, they're not sustainable, so we don't know about the realistic viability of something like that. Could it be that we look at stipends that, as this, PDG planning grant goes forward, that, one of the things that comes out of it is the need to address sub pools. And, oh, you see trash truck. Yep, trash truck's coming. It's Friday, trash truck day. It's an exciting day. That some of that needs assessment be that there is funding for stipends that we can tap into to pay for a sub, so that way then parents are not doing without care, and we're not doing without our own logistics, things like that. The other concept that got brought up was that it is virtually impossible to find a sub, because who exactly wants to sub for someone else's business? You're going to get paid little to nothing as is. And then it's on us to maintain the requirements, the 16 hours and the fingerprinting and on and so forth. So did that trash truck go by? I know. Can I finish my thought real fast? And then we'll talk about trash truck. And so looking at the viability of a sub licensure program where people have the ability to maintain their own sub license. They are known to the state because it's so exciting, I know. Trash truck, yes. They did the work to get their hours and things like that. They still qualify, for this licensing fee that, it's covered, we work it out. But either way, we make a recommendation that pertains to the logistics of how do we help providers have that backup care that we need? Because, I have known people that they figured out that they have heart conditions that they have to now start treating. And it's because they haven't been going to the doctor, and now they have high blood pressure. And had they been able to go to their regular appointments, it could have been identified easier without as much medicine. I know it's gone and you're disappointed. I see that. So that was some of that type of stuff. And I think that pretty much sums up the notes that I have written down at this point.
So I can provide a little bit of information that might, be helpful. So the Career Pathway Project, about 6 or 7 months ago, we were able to earmark 28 million from the relief funding to support the career pathway. So some of the first investments that we're prioritizing are substitute stipends, obviously scholarships to cover professional development, scholarships for more CDAs, more NAFC, more directors credential, things like that. But the sub stipends and the and just stipends in general for providers to do what you're talking about is part of the career pathway package. So I think that if we're going to go that route, that we focus not on the planning grant, but on the career pathway implementation, because that's where we have funding for it. And I think that if we were to get the planning grant, I think the estimate I've heard is maybe like 500,000 is what Kansas would get. So it's not a whole lot of money compared to other funding streams. So I think that providers are going to have a key role to play with that, but that we don't necessarily need to do that legwork because it's already a priority with the career pathway project. Like we've already said we need money, and we need money for sub stipends and the things that you're talking about.
So I guess my question is though, like, we keep talking about this career pathways, and I believe in career pathways. I think it's good. I want to see it implemented, but it's like this idea that keeps cycling around in meetings without any definition on when the implementation, like, I know I've heard 2023, but like, are we truly going to be able to start going forward with that and seeing the results of, like, hey, this money exists, and therefore, because of career pathways, providers are in fact able to tap into this, and people are in fact able to become subs under their own sub license type situation. Like, do we have a timeline?
We do have a timeline. So the sub-licensing has not been talked about, just to be transparent. But the timeline for releasing the career pathway on the All In for Kansas Kids website will be before the first of the year. So I think December 14th is where our contractor said we should be. We just reviewed with them like last week. So that will be the release of the career pathway. It's an interactive visual. You can also print a flat artifact, and then there's, FAQs and tips for use and stuff like that. So first phase of implementation will happen before January 1. And then from there, it's going to be writing the full implementation plan, and providing and selecting, a contractor to actually implement the career pathway. So we're inching along.
Okay. As far as figuring out like the contractor to implement it, like, are we thinking that could be done like in first quarter, or are we saying that work would be done by the end of 2023?
I think scholarships. So this is my, based on the 2 years that I've been involved with the project, I think in the first quarter of 2023, we'll see scholarships given out to the workforce, probably the sub stipends, the lower hanging fruit, the money that we can just push out. That will also necessitate additional staff to support those additional CDA candidates, people that are pursuing professional development. So those types of investments, yes, I would say the first quarter to 6 months of 23. The larger investments, like the development of the certificate of mastery, will not happen in the first 6 months of 23. But just based on the allocation and the obligation timeline of the funding, we're under some real pressure.
Okay.
So if nothing else, that's good because we have to spend it. So
right. And that is helpful to know. I know, at least from the provider end, part of what people are feeling is that they've done this work for decades, frankly, but the last 2 years we've kept Kansas afloat, and like the money that we're getting in sustainability, that's good, but it still doesn't allow for things like, I have got to leave to be able to go and do XYZ thing. And we're starting to feel that, like, hey, I took care of you, I've got to take care of myself. I got to go to the doctor. I got to go, do this. I would like to go to my kids' field trip. Field trips are starting back up. We consistently have to miss out on stuff like that. So I know that was some of the feedback I got. The other thing that I would say is, if we're going to look at strategic plan, mentorship, I know, is a topic that, people, both members of CCPC and non-members, I hear people talking about that. And so that would be another thing to put on the table to chew on, about how do we get the workforce able to be recognized as, viable professional resources.
Emily, this is Jennifer. I was wondering if you might be able to, or if you had any additional information on that about the mentoring, like what kinds of things are folks saying? And are you thinking about like the workforce serving as mentors or mentorship for the workforce? just a little bit more information. I'm just curious.
So like, the development of the health consultant network has been very helpful to like, hey, let's think about like, we've got this funding, we need to come up with grants, here's some logistical type stuff. But, and there are organizations that have targeted like, hey, we've got network consultants who have been family childcare providers. But by and large, quite often, there are times when you're talking with someone that they don't have the experience. They've never worked 10 hours a day without a break and a child sneezing into your eyeball while you are trying to navigate a parent who doesn't want to keep their kid home for just a cough, and that they're angry and they're threatening to take their kid out of your care because you've asked them to keep them home for just a cough. And so things like having that time where it's focused on develop. It's not just like, hey, I'm going to come and sit here and gripe and complain. It's strategizing on, have you worked on this, worked on that? When I participated in, there was the Step It Up grant from 2015 to 2018 that I participated in. First year, I was a participant. Second 2 years, I was a mentor. And so the first year that I was a mentor, the second year of its operation, for one of the learning sessions, it was my responsibility as one of the mentors to bring in a resource. And so I reached out to a local lactation consultant, and she came in and talked to everybody about like what her role was, for a family and how she supported a family during pregnancy and after birth, and gave some ideas on, ways to implement, breastfeeding friendly strategies in their program. At that time, the idea of giving, like turning on your crock pot and just letting it warm up to be, what you use to warm the milk was circulating around on the internet. And she was like, yeah, hey, please don't do that. Like it gets too hot and you're going to burn the babies and you might in fact kill some of the nutrients in that process. Please don't do that. And so it was things like that. And then the next year, I was again a mentor and again looked to bring in a resource. And so I brought in a birth doula who again was able to, help. Well, actually this person was a birth doula and a postpartum doula. And so that way then providers were able to see two different facets of like the types of networks that can support parents. Then Step It Up ended and I moved into CCQI, Childcare Quality Initiatives, and I never had a chance to truly become a mentor and I did become a mentor, but then COVID interrupted that cycle. And so like a lot of the implementation that had kind of already begun to be talked about didn't happen because we couldn't, and that's not ever developed back up. So things, that was part of where my frustration came in, was that I spent, 10 to 12 hours of those different cycles, mentoring my peers, being, hey, I tried this. I tried family style dining and this is how I implemented it. And oh, hey, look, this is how it worked. And, 5 people walked out of the next cycle using family style dining. And then, talking about the lactation consultant and the doula and things like that. And then people now were in touch with different networks in our area. That was professional development on my end for me too, that, I gained skills out of that, but I got no credit for it. Like the state doesn't care that I gained skills while also helping my friends, saying, yeah, family style dining seems really intimidating, and giving a 2-year-old a serving spoon seems like you're going to have peas all over the floor, but guess what? It doesn't happen. Or if it does, then they're the ones involved in helping you clean it up. And so there's ways to pull us in. We have expertise. If you've not worked in an environment, if you're a health network consultant and you're doing good work helping us, but you've never implemented family style dining with a group of 2-year-olds, you don't know how to talk a provider through why maybe they should consider something like that. or a provider who's looking into play-based learning and why they would want to use play-based learning over Montessori. If you've not implemented that, you can advise us all you want on how to use our money. That's really good. But if you don't realize to say, hey, it's not either or, here are some ideas that are play-based that are in fact still Montessori. This is what I did. If you had this resource, you could use it this way. And so it's just pulling from the fact that we know a thing or two, but we're not treated as if we do.
Sorry, I was trying to get sorry, go ahead, Hannah.
I just, I don't know. It pains me to hear some of that sentiment. I know that it's deeply felt, but one of the things that we were pretty intentional about in the career pathway work is paying childcare providers, especially maybe using experienced providers that are leaving the field as mentors, paying them to be mentors, so we could still keep them in the workforce, with all of that historical knowledge, but not lose them all the way. So like if they've had, an FCC for 25 years and they're closing their doors, to still keep them in that, in the circle and use all of their historical knowledge and not lose it. So that's been a big part of the discussion around mentoring, and the career pathway and the table and stuff. The hours of mentoring that some of those levels require, the mentoring would be from providers. It would not be from like systems level people, because we agree that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I did ask Cornelia, or I did kind of give her a heads up that we were going to be talking about zoning maybe. And especially it's pretty timely with that presentation from KDHE about the GO team, because I could see those two things going together. Is there any interest in tackling the zoning issues from this group? Like I said, I think it is a priority for Melissa, but quite frankly, I don't know if I completely understand the nuances of the barriers. I think that's something you may have had to fight tooth and nail with your own community to truly get. So is that an issue? Are zoning issues barriers for providers, whether that's an FCC or a center?
There are HOAs that specifically will not allow family childcare in the neighborhood and will actively shut people down.
So do we think that this is an issue more for one setting over the other, or is it across the board?
My initial thought is that it's more home-based, is my initial thought in terms of where the challenges occur. I mean, I could be wrong in that, but that's my initial thought. This hasn't really come to the forefront of discussions, or whatnot yet. So I'm glad that it's actually here now, because maybe there's stuff that I'm not realizing, as a center-based provider. We have, there's limitations in terms of centers, but it's more because of like how much land you have, versus, and so I don't know that kind of is the same, but I definitely understand in terms of what Emily is stating. We in my HOA, we cannot have a child care provider. Can't have it. That's very clear in its rules, is that you cannot do that. And so I totally get that, and that definitely limits opportunity for expansion as we're trying to push for more home providers. It's not an option. And so, but I don't know how the state tackles that or what the state does. But from a center perspective, I'm going to have to do some digging and try to figure out how all of that actually impacts us in ways that I think the state may have the ability to do something about.
I think one strategy could be connecting with the GO team and seeing if there's a list of just resources for somebody if they come up to that issue, who to reach out to and how to navigate the problem, as far as how to actually write ordinances or I mean, big dream state, like a state statute that would preclude that sort of barrier. I mean, that's a whole nother matter, but I can see some small goals of just being able to provide potential providers with resources if they're running into those barriers. But I don't want to take this group in a direction that you all are not interested in going on. But I do think we should find something that hasn't been done within the strategic plan. Another thing that came up last meeting was links to quality. So links to quality has been in a pilot for a few years now. Really, they've been waiting on the registry for the last like 18 months. They were at a point of expansion, and it just made more sense for the system to wait on the registry together. So with registry being built here in the next year, links to quality could be another great place to put our energy and resources. But I mean, because that is literally quality. I see tiny hands, tiny little paws. Well, I'm totally fine to do the, I'll do the report out if that's okay with this group. And I think for next, I'm so sorry. I think for next meeting, what I'll do is I'll do a little bit more digging on the zoning and see kind of the level that we could bring it to. If it really would be possible to approach it from a state level instead of just community by community, that's certainly less powerful. And then let me, things are kind of hush hush right now because contracts haven't been awarded and whatever for the actual implementation work of the career pathway. But let me work on some assurances that we are all on the same page about using providers as mentors. And then another thing that might be nice to hear is we've talked about regarding the career pathway, we've talked about state agencies or just agencies in general allowing their employees to be PD specialists, and then go in and actually do the CDA evaluations, because that's a huge problem for CDA candidates is you can't ever find somebody to come in and actually evaluate. But places like Casito, they have agreements where their staff get paid regardless, and so using staff time, they go and they do the evaluation, and that kind of cuts out some of the issues. So if we could come up with some sort of articulation agreement with agencies across the state that are either giving R&R or the health consultants, people like that, where the agency would actually be okay with the staff doing that during staff time, so we have a consistent supply of reviewers, I think that would be great. But that's also been on our radar. Emily, are you excited about the NAFC cohort?
I'm not a part of it, but I know multiple people who are in that cohort and they're really having a good time. And I would like to see it continue. And so that even in all of this is ensuring that Casito has the funding to keep it going for next year, because I want to be a part of it. It's, and so, yeah, I'm excited about it. I think it's good work. I think that it's when we talk about the professionalism of providers, this is the way that we can show, no, we mean it. When I say this is my career, I mean it, because I'm following it up with this type of stuff. And so, yeah, I think it's awesome. And
yeah, it seems really cool. Yeah. Just the fact that they're able to take that trip together even. Yeah.
That was pretty awesome. And so yeah.
I heard all about that, and it's a pretty incredible endeavor, just the scope of that cohort, like what they're doing and how involved it is. But yeah, I figured you'd be excited about it too.
Accreditation is quite an undertaking, and I've known multiple people who are now all retired. They're all in their 60s, and they did it for 35 some years, and now they're done. And they got themselves accredited by themselves without this type of thing. And I can only imagine what that was like when there wasn't this level of support. So I'm very glad to see it, and I would love to see that it continues, that there's enough funding to keep it going year after year after year.
All right, we're going to have to keep all of our secrets to ourselves because it looks like the rest of the panel is coming back into the room.
Looks like we have a good number of everybody back. And so now we're going to hear reports and updates from all of our work groups. And so do we want to have our quality environment team go first? Ms. Hannah, I think you were going to be the spokesperson.
Yes, ma'am. So last month we talked about a few things, and one of the asks that we made of Emily, one of our members, was to go back to CCPC and kind of see what the Child Care Provider Coalition, what's been on their mind as far as quality and environment. So today we were able to talk about mentorships and how important it is that providers are being utilized as mentors, given that they have such a high level of knowledge and experience in the field. And so we talked about the way that mentors are being envisioned. Sorry, I'm letting people back in. To be used with the career pathway implementation as actual, especially tied to some level of payment. We know that we have really great resources in the system like CCHCs, but sometimes that peer-to-peer mentorship where your mentor has lived some of the issues that you're facing is a little bit more helpful. So we talked about mentorship. We also talked about the importance of having substitute stipends and having a substitute pool. So this is something that we've dreamed about and potentially integrating into the registry and having that pool of candidates within the registry as users, and being able to actually locate them and acquire their services through the registry. To date, it's kind of difficult to do that at a statewide level, and it's hard to keep that pool, beefed up, if you will. So that's another thing that we talked about as far as quality and how difficult it is for providers to get away and take care of their own needs when they can't get substitutes. We also talked about a few of the areas within the strategic plan for quality environments that we haven't got to yet within PDG. One of them being zoning issues. We talked about how especially family child care providers have barriers with zoning regulations specific to HOAs, for example. And so we're going to do a little bit of research and see if there's an approach maybe that we could coordinate with the GO team with just maybe some resources for a person that's coming into those or facing those barriers, and then kind of what that conversation looks like at the larger level. So maybe even at the state level, how we could make a recommendation about zoning. So we've got some research to do. And then I'm also going to, as part of the career pathway team in my other hat, I'm going to find some evidence to support how strongly we feel about using providers as mentors within the new professional development system that we're building right now. So that's kind of where we're at for quality and environments. And my team, is there anything that I have forgotten?
Mostly that, like, also to include with the mentorship, like stipends and payment is helpful, but also that there is an acknowledgement, whether it's clock hours or something, but somehow like at state level with our licenses as the mentor, we're receiving acknowledgement there that like we're not giving 10 to 12 hours of mentorship time and then still having to do our own 16 hours on top, that there's an acknowledgement of that we've now gone above and beyond. So somehow clock hours, professional recognition, something like that. is attached to the participation as a mentor.
Thank you, Emily. And then the other thing is we just briefly touched on the NAFC cohort that's going through with Casita right now and how incredible that is and how optimistic we are as a group that we can continue to fund efforts like this beyond this year. And just how important accreditation is for professional achievement for that individual. I think that's all we have, Cornelia.
Perfect. Perfect. Recruitment and retention.
That would be me, Tanya Bullock. We actually had some really great conversations that we had so much. I think we almost wanted to have our own meeting after this just alone because we need to sum all this up. I'm going to do my best. I think, what we kind of discussed and what it boiled down to is we really want to, it's really difficult because there's a lot of great work happening all across the state. And I think we hear this a lot in all of our meetings that we all sit on. We just want to make sure we're not duplicating efforts, and we have a lot of great things happening trying to recruit and retain childcare providers. But how do we learn about, I think that's the biggest issue we hear a lot is how do we learn about what everybody's doing? How can we create some sort of repository of things that everyone is doing across the state so that we can work together in this childcare industry and connect with others who are doing similar work without, and especially if they're successful. We have some folks in Johnson County who are creating comprehensive classes that are giving information on how-tos and including contracting work, insurance discussions, because a lot of childcare providers are unsupported in that, and they need information. I want to say, Emily, I was in a meeting with you just the other day, and it may have even been another provider too, but discussing business plans. Where do you know what a business plan is, and budgeting, and providers need support with that too. Once they get in, it becomes overwhelming in just retaining them. Also working with the SBA. Can we get the SBA involved and understand the importance of what childcare providers do? We hear this all the time. We advocate for this. They're not babysitters. They're early care and education. We need to treat them like they run a professional business, and what they're doing is important. And so we think that's something we need to try and do. But some things that other folks are doing, something I did recently, but is big right now, and it's been successful, but we need to bring employers into these conversations. Employers need childcare or they will not be able to hire employees. So some strategies and initiatives we want to discuss are to include employers and to possibly figure out a way to, I think it was brought up that somehow maybe creating a designation for employers and designating them. And so how can we designate them as being a place? And then I discussed that we have family-friendly workplace. So if we can invest employers in investing in themselves by investing in childcare solutions and potential policy solutions, I think we can go further in our childcare crisis. And I think that's kind of where we're going. I'm telling you, we were everywhere and we have lots of great ideas. So stay tuned.
Very cool. And last, family partnerships.
Good morning. I'm Megan Kluth, the facilitator. So we continued our conversation from last month where we talked a lot about language and terms that might feel off-putting or not accessible for families. And we also talked about, a lot of times families just kind of assume that they may not qualify for something, and that may or may not be true, particularly when people have like a short-term need, like maybe they have a health situation come up and they need something that might not be a long-term need, but really helping people understand like what's available wherever they are in their lives, and that what's the disconnect between people not being able to access that, and how can we kind of break that down, and what's the role of language with that. So we continued that conversation today. We also talked about that while it's important to make sure that people have the information about what's available and what they qualify for, we know that the navigation part is critical. And so it needs to be beyond just information sharing, excuse me, and that actual human support for helping somebody actually understand, because, you know, we talked about, like, sometimes people come in with what they think is their need or their one need, and it may be that they actually need something else, or they need multiple things. And so, you know, creating a path for a broader conversation about what a family really needs. So we talked about what could that look like? What are ways to kind of continue strengthening outreach? Somebody brought up there's the 988 hotline for mental health. Could there be something like that where families could reach out and say, I need some support for early childhood? We talked a lot about 1-800-CHILDREN and how families access that. And could there be something like an opt-in text program for families to be able to access resources, but also reach out and say, hey, I need something. Particularly, we know trust can be a challenge, and helping families feel safe and saying, I need help, and that's not going to come with a negative repercussion. And so how can we also strengthen the relationships with people in the communities that families do trust, whether it's healthcare providers or childcare providers, making sure that they're aware of the resources so that when they give a referral to a family, it might feel a little bit safer than a direct referral from a state agency, just depending on a family's experience and perceptions. So we also talked about how we can try to align and connect with the new All In for Kansas Kids website, which was formerly Navigate EC, that launched earlier this fall. DCF shared that they'll have some upcoming marketing about the change in subsidy income qualifications. And so just how do we make sure that when we're doing these types of outreach, like how can we actually make sure this information gets to families and to the people that are talking to families so that the word continues to spread. So I'm going to stop there because I think I'm about to lose my voice, but if anybody else from my group wants to chime in, please do. Thank you.
Well, as always, it's cool to hear all of the discussions from the different work groups. You know, you think, okay, do we really have anything more to talk about? But there's plenty to talk about, right? And so like the need to have meetings after the meeting, because there's so much that comes up, you know, during the discussion and the things we're tackling. And so so I appreciate everybody sharing and your participation in the groups. So now we have bright spots. And so this is an opportunity for you to share the good things happening in your world. You know, what would you like to share with the group? Who would like to go first? No bright spots?
I know that this seems silly, but my little guys, you know, like they're at this age where they're transitioning from being, you know, infants and babies into toddlers. And at one point, while we were in the midst of a discussion, I looked and I only have boys today just because of illness. All of the kiddos were sitting, actually playing productively with something. And all of these kiddos are climbers and runners and throwers, and like they're so physical. And then at one point I looked around and they were all engaged in something, and I just was like, that's really kind of cool. So that's my bright spot on this really cold Friday, is that my kids are amazing.
That's awesome. And no, it's not silly at all. That is awesome. And I'm always, your ability to multitask, you know, listening to you say, yes, that is the trash truck. And now you keep on talking about business, and then you go back to the trash truck, and then you keep on talking about business. And so the juggling, you know, it makes it real. And so I appreciate that. Maritas.
Hello, everybody. This is Maritas. I would just like to share an information. If you know anybody with visual impairments or combined hearing and vision loss, that we are providing a virtual music therapy. We call it Music and Me for families. And we get an award from the CAC Division of Visual Impairment and Deaf Blindness. It's a 2022 Innovative Grant Awards. And so we have a Music in Me instrument kit that we send to families as we work with them. So if you know anybody, let me know.
That's pretty exciting to hear. My bachelor's degree is in music therapy, and so I love the integration that you have in all of that. So that is actually very cool. So thanks for sharing. Jennifer.
Hi, yes, I just wanted to put a shout out to Pam Noble and her staff at KCSL for throwing a fantastic parent leadership conference. If you've not had the pleasure of attending, you should definitely attend next year. I was so moved by it, and it was wonderful to be part of it. And anyway, just wanted to put that out there. It was a great conference.
Thank you. Logan.
I was just going to relay Logan's sensing. I have a friend that I've known since childhood that's a child care provider, and we were talking about the child care bonus that she received recently, and she was able to put some of that away to save it, but then she also used it for vacation that she just took, and it was much needed, and she just was talking about how it was such a cool opportunity, and so I just wanted to echo that I hope that there's more stories like that as well from that bonus, and also what we can do more to make sure that those bonuses and supports like it keep happening for providers in Kansas. So thank you.
Tanya.
Hi, I just wanted to share. It's a personal bright spot for me. I'm still going to be on the early childhood recommendations panel, and I'm very excited. But I was recently named the executive director of Child Start, so I will begin my new role next month, and I'm so excited because I feel like I can just do. I feel like I do so much, but I feel like I can do so much more now, and I'm very excited. Still going to do all the great things, and I will still be able to connect with everybody, but I just wanted to share, if you see me more or less, you can still connect with me. So
Congratulations, Tanya. Very proud. I'm sure I speak on behalf of all of us. Very, very proud of you, and congratulations. And I'm excited to have you leading an amazing organization. I say that as a friend and a partner. So, so very good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Any other bright spots? Okay, so for our upcoming meetings, the next Children's Cabinet and Trust Fund meeting will be Friday, December 2nd from 9 to 12. Our early childhood work group meeting is going to be also on Friday, December 2nd. That's going to be from 1:30 to 3 o'clock. And then our next early childhood recommendations panel is going to be Friday, December 16th from 9 to 11:30. Until then, of course, next week is Thanksgiving. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday. I hope you have opportunities to eat until your belly busts open and you have to just sit and rest because you cannot eat anymore. And then you spend the weekend shopping. If that is what you do, and or making fun of everybody who shops, because you're not going to have any part of that. And so, so happy Thanksgiving to all of you. I hope you all have a happy, a great weekend. It's supposed to be a little chilly, so a great weekend, and we will see you in December. Take care.